Hey there, we are going to be learning Angular.js. Angular is basically an MV star, whatever. It's, one of the ways of making a single page web app in JavaScript. So with no further ado, let's just get into it. I'm going to assume you know a decent bit about JavaScript already. Once I'm done with this, I'll probably do a beginner level intro video for people who are not familiar with JavaScript already. So kind of the premise here is you already know what a single page app is, kind of all the concepts behind it, and we're just going to look into how to do a great one with Angular and why it's awesome for very rapid development. So kind of here's my index HTML, what we got here, just kind of importing a basic style sheet, nothing fancy. I'm importing jQuery, Angular, and I'm going to be using Angular UI Router, which is kind of an add-on routing system, which is definitely, so far anyway, the way to go with Angular. And the only JS file I'm including is app.js so far, and then some Bootstrap stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that this is what we want our app to be. The first thing you do is you define ng app equals, and then the name of the module that you're going to be using for your Angular app. So we'll just call it app, so as to make it simple. ng app equals app. So now Angular is going to instantiate on this element. What we are going to do then is we need to define a view for the UI router. So we will do a div, and we will go UI view. So that tells us pop whatever view we're loading right in there. Okay, so basically when Angular sees an app, what it's going to do is it's going to evaluate everything inside of it, and it uses that as your templating. So basically, you'll see a lot of the Angular way is your views happen in the HTML, and then you have controllers and you have services, all of that build on top of that. So kind of an example would be, let's say we want a header. Let's go header, and let's go ng include. This is going to include a HTML file for us. So we're going to go templates. Now let me see what that is. Templates nav.html. And then so far we don't have an app module defined yet, so let's go ahead and define our app module first. I'm going to go over to app.js. We're going to go Angular. Oh, I got some sort of... You're going to go .module. Call it app. And then the next thing you're going to do is define any dependencies in an array. When you're first defining a module, you have to at least include a blank array for dependencies. Otherwise, it will break. So I'm going to, my only dependency is UI.router. Make sure UI router has loaded before my app fires. And now we've got an app, and you'll notice that it's instantiated, and I'm loading in my navigation. I'm going to go back to my index. I'm also going to add in a footer. ng. And now I should have a footer. I wonder if there's anything in my footer. My awesome tutorial. So that should be showing up. It's giving me some sort of error. Unterminated quote. Yep, there we go. And you'll notice I'm putting single quotes with inside of here because it's actually going to be evaluating this as a JavaScript string. We can get into that a little more later. So now we have a header, a footer, and absolutely nothing coming in here. So let's start defining some routes. You'll notice Angular starts off by giving us a hashtag navigation up here. And so let's start adding some routes. We have already created the module. Now let's go config. And we're going to do our dependencies. One of the awesome things about Angular is it does dependency injection. If you have not used dependency injection, get ready to fall in love with it. We're going to request 2 dependencies here. And it will insert those 2 dependencies into my first, actually there we go. It will insert those 2 dependencies into the first 2 arguments of my function here. So okay, so what we've done here is we've gone config, requiring these 2 dependencies. Sorry, I'm using half of a screen here, so it's a little Probably frustrating. And then those dependencies automatically get passed in order into my function. The reason we're kind of doing double defining here is this is called annotating. And the reason we're doing that is because if we didn't do that, when you minify it, these are going to get called like A and B, and it's not going to know what dependencies those are. So we've kind of got to define what the modules are there, and then you can call them whatever you want, but as a good standard, call them what they actually are. First move we're going to do is URL router provider otherwise. So when you type in anything else, it'll go to slash. So now I should be able to go to haha, and it's just going to bounce me back to slash. Test, back to slash. Okay, that's all we need to do with the URL router provider. State provider is what is given to us by UI router. State provider is where we're going to be defining all of our states, and i.e. our routing. So state provider, state. Home state, and we're going to go URL. That's this URL we're on now. Template. Let's just call it home. And I should now see home. There we go. I gave it a template of a string. So I could go home, and I could also go template URL. And that should, there's no home HTML, which it's telling me that's not found down here, which is a good thing. New file. Can't type today. Now you'll see home template has arrived there. So that's kind of a basic startup. Let's go ahead and add another route called, what do we have? We have about. Once again, can't type tonight. About will go slash about, and it will look for about.html. There we go. So now if we go to hashtag slash about, we should get about template. And if we go hashtag slash home, home template. So as you can see, we are very quickly creating a single page app that just works. Angular takes care of all the memory cleanup and things that would normally be associated with that. Let's go ahead and make these buttons now navigate us. So let me go to nav.html. This is going to go to about, and this is just going to go to slash, and we'll make this go to contacts. Save. So now I should be able to go to about, change to about, go back home. And you notice that this did not change. That's something we can address. I'm going to go, another thing that you can do with UI router is you can, instead of doing href, you can go UI-sref for UI. You'll notice everything UI router related isn't ng, it's UI. State ref, and we can just call it about, refer to it by name. That also works. They're interchangeable. So about and home, we're working great on both. Oh, might as well just go UI-sref. Okay, and then another thing that we can do is start building out these templates some more. Let's go ahead and define a controller on home. So now home has a controller, and let's in the controller use scope. Now, so scope is the variables and arguments that are accessible to the template is basically what we're providing. So if I go scope dot title, now I can, in my home HTML only, I can use Angular's mustache-like templating and go title. So now it goes home. Or what would be better, do an H1. There we go, home. And I can also go UL, LI. Let me go back to this and add Scope.items equals an array. Scope.items. So now what I can do is I can use ng-repeat equals item in items. So now each li gets item. So it's going to loop through the items array, and each item in that array gets passed here. I can call this whatever I want. I can call this thing in items. It's kind of basically doing an each, and now I can reference it as thing. So you notice now I have a list, and I can change this. And my list automatically changes. Angular is really, really fast with development. So then let's go ahead and, so now you can notice home and about, we're getting some drastically different templating options. It's lightning quick. It just works. This controller, obviously, this pattern will not work. One thing you'll notice that I forgot to do is I forgot to annotate it. I just went controller function. This will work totally fine until you decide to minify your JavaScript, at which point this will just be called, once again, A, in which case it will not know what A is. It's not going to magically know that that's scope. So what we're going to do is we're going to annotate that, say scope. If you've ever used require.js, it's basically like using require.js. You just use an array, and the last argument of your array, or the last piece of your array, is the function that's executing. So scope there, and now that's going to work great when it minifies, because this is going to be called A, and these are both going to be called A, and it's still going to work just fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to break this controller out into home control. And that's going to break my code, because there is no such thing as home control. I'm going to make that file now. Angular module app. This is going to be a part of the same. I'm going to consider it a part of the same module. I don't need to put any dependencies in there because it's already been defined. I'm going to go controller. And kind of the naming convention that's standard for Angular controllers is to end them with CTRL. And then let's just go function. Actually, I'm going to annotate it. Same thing. State. Function. I'm sorry, scope. Scope. Probably could have just copied and pasted that whole thing. There we go, and now I just need to add home controller to my index, which it'll automatically get. Automatically get minified on deployment. And now my app should be working. Yep, beautiful, my app is working. Let me just copy and paste this and create an about controller. About control, I'm going to save you. There we go, and so now about is going to have a controller of about controller. And now the about template just needs to be adjusted to do the same thing. Let's make the about template exactly the same as the home template. And you see that now I have a different title and a different list, thing 1, thing 2, thing 3 when I'm on the about page. Let's work on getting this guy fixed right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to one thing you can do, oh yeah, let's get into data binding. Before I mess with this, let's get into some data binding. This is one of the awesome things about Angular, is it's got two-way data binding just completely baked in. So let's go to our home control. Let's say title is home. Okay, great. Let's make an input. And this ng model, what that means is we're going to map it to an item in the scope. And since we already have something called home, actually title, then you're going to get yourself an input that is automatically called populated with home. And now I can change it. And you'll notice that scope.home is automatically updated. You can even add this to models that are not defined in your controller. ng model equals my value. And I'm just going to print right here my value, as if it was already defined in the controller. It starts off with nothing there. There you go. If my controller is looking for scope.myValue, it will automatically be populated. It is super awesome. Another thing you can do is you can create select inputs based off of information in an array. So say we have an array there. We have home, about, contact. I can go here, ng model equals, let's call it selected value, which hasn't been typed in. And for ng options, it's going to be value for value in items. So basically it's just going to be, there you go. You'll notice it starts off empty because I have not defined a selected value yet, and now I have my option of items. I could go in home control and I could go scope dot, and now it's going to automatically make sure home is pre-selected. I think it's called selected value. There you go. Home is now pre-selected whenever I boot up my page. So it's really, really a cool thing. Let's talk about some services. Let's wire in a web service now. I'm going to go to my app. One thing that's great, let's say home has a dependency of, it needs to hit a service and load up my friends list before it sends me to home. Then we can do a resolve and pass in an array, and we can have it, each item in this resolve object is going to represent a service call or something that has to happen before it proceeds and loads the controller in the template. So we're going to resolve friends, and then we're going to say that this has a dependency of HTTP, which is a built-in Angular thing. And we're just going to return http.get API friends. I just have a JSON file, but it would be no different if it was an actual service. That is going to return friends.json. And so one of the things that it gives you is a response. We're actually going to want to parse it down just a little bit. So we're going to use a then response, return response.data, which is what the actual friends.json is. You'll notice I just have a JSON array, name Will, 30, name Laura, age 26. And so basically now, before it goes to the template and the controller, it is going to hit the friends API. It's going to parse that here, which there's no real parsing going except for give me the data. It's kind of the equivalent of a backbone parse is what we're doing, for those guys familiar with Backbone. And now it's going to make a friends provider available to this controller if I want it. So how we use that then, did I do that on home? Yeah, okay, home. So now I can make scope a dependency and I can go friends. Make the second argument friends. Scope friends equals friends. And now let's make this friend in friends. There we go. Whoops. Let's print friend name, colon, friend dot age. And let's actually use the right brackets. There you go. So now we have hit an API. We've made that available. What I can do now is, how about for each one of these, instead of doing an li, or instead of doing that, I do an input. ngModel equals friend name age. Let's say we want to change some stuff. There we go. And now that is real-time changed in the scope. And so let's do another thing. Let's make a scope method. Let's make a save button. Clean this up a little bit. Let's make this all nice and bootstrap looking. Looks a little nicer. And so what we're just going to do is an ng-click, which we can now give it a method, save. ng-click save. And so if I go to this home control, I can now go scope save equals a method. And we'll just make it alert. So now when I hit save, what did I miss? No semicolon there. There you go. My live reload is not working quite right today. So there you go. So now when I hit save, it's going to do that. Let's actually make it alert. Stringify scope.friends. There you go. So that's what we're saving, plus a little bit of random stuff that Angular's decided to put in there. Bob, John. There you go. So now Bob and John. So I can also do a HTTP, same thing. Post friends, and I can just put in scope.friends. Or actually I can just do friends. There you go. That's going to post that data straight back up, and now I have a real-time editor for my friends list. If I wanted to make a button on each one that deleted it, oh, it's a pretty bad button. I could use a glyph for that, but let's go ng-click. And you can actually put in an evaluation if you'd like. So I can go index is what my index is going to be. I can go friends. Friends splice that. Let's see if that works. There you go. So now on ng-click, I'm going to splice out my index straight out of friends, and now it's gone. If I hit save, I have nothing that I'm posting back an empty array. So that's kind of a rapid fire introduction to a lot of the Angular things that you can do. Another thing that you can do, like if we are approaching this up here, you can do a class issue. We can make this one, let me go to this friends JSON, and we're going to say I'm special. Actually, you know what? Since Laura's my wife and I'm Will, I'm going to say she's special and I'm not. False. So now what I can do here is, we're doing this on home. Yes, okay. What I can do is If you're not special, I can do ng class, and now I can pass in an object of the different classes that I would conditionally like to add. So I'm going to go text muted, which is Bootstrap's way of dimming it out. And that's going to go if not friend. If friend is not special, it's going to give it a text muted class. You notice it's all didn't really do that big of a deal because you can't really tell, but that's muted. That's a lighter color. I could go special if friend is special. That might make a better way. Add a CSS rule here. Let's go styles. Special gets a background red. I didn't test I'm kind of on a test thing here, so I don't know if, apparently I didn't check my styles on live reload, so not sure why that's not working. But at any rate, this should have now a special class to it. Yep. So if you look at my second LI, it's got a class of special. So that should be background of red. Not sure quite why it's not. That would be how you adjust a class, like if we were to adjust a class up there. Let's see, what are some other great things that you can do with Angular? You can provide services. Let's say that we wanted to make this API something that's reusable by a lot of different objects. It's cacheable. It does a lot of smarts to it. In that case, we would actually move on to an Angular service. So what we would do is we would create a services file. Friends. Let's keep this all for easiness. I'm going to keep it all registered to the app module. And we're going to do factory. As a normal naming convention, if you're creating an Angular service, you're going to start by uppercasing it. There we go, friends. And whatever we return is what our people are going to get when they get whenever they load this module. So if we return this and it's just a list of friends, let's just return get, which just returns this guy. So I'm going to return an object which has a single method of get, and that's what my friends factory is. Let me go ahead and add this to my page. My friends service is added, and now what I can do is friends can now not require HTTP, it can require friends. And I can go return should have the same effect. Yep, there you go. As you can see, no difference whatsoever. I can also, instead of doing this in the resolve, if for some reason I wanted to do this in the controller at some point, I can add this as a dependency here. Friends now is a service, not a resolve provider. So I can go friends.get. There you go. So that's another way that you can do it. And now multiple controllers can all share friends. About can use friends as a dependency. About items can be friends.get. And now I can mess with that service. I can import HTTP into this. So get could now return friends.json, then now that will work exactly the same, or it should. Not sure what I messed up on that, but that should basically do the exact same thing. Green friends, that's my Allstate agent. I'm not exactly sure what I messed up there. I'm sure it's just some small little deal that I messed up. I wonder if this has to be. No, that's not it, because that's just a normal method. And I'm sure it's something simple. But at any rate, that's basically how you would wire that in to then be a resource getter and setter. So that's kind of your introduction to how to use AngularJS. If you check out UI Router, you can also do nested views and subviews and a lot of great stuff on here. And that is what you need to do to get started. So hope you enjoyed it. Have yourself a great day.